Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to go over solving linear equations for y, and then we're going to graph those lines. We're going to identify the slope, the y-intercept, and then we're going to calculate some table values by hand. Okay, so let's start with our slope-intercept equation, y equals mx plus b. Okay, so you'll recall that from your Algebra 1 class. So what does M stand for? Well, if you're always forgetting this stuff, this is called the slope-intercept equation. So you have two things to identify, the slope and the intercept. And is it the y-intercept or the x-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is the more commonly identified intercept, although in this class, especially in Algebra and Algebra 2, you do identify x-intercepts, but that's not what this equation is really about. So M is the slope, and then B is the y-intercept. Why is it the y-intercept? Because the equation is solved for y. Okay? Alright, and then slope is interpreted as the blank over blank. What I'm looking for here is it's the rise over run. Okay? So that's basically the basics. And let's just get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to solve each of these for y equals, or get them into slope-intercept form. And then we're going to graph those, okay? And we're going to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So I have x plus 3y equals 6. All right. I need to get rid of everything that's not just y. So I'm going to minus this x to the other side. Okay. Then I have 3y equals 6 minus x. Okay, I have 3y, so I'm going to divide everything by 3. So since there's not a number by the x, looks like I have one x there. So what this is going to say is y equals, so 6 divided by 3 is 2 minus 1/3 x. You could leave it as x over 3, but it's a lot easier to understand if you just make it into a fraction like 1/3. Alright, now this is not quite in y equals mx plus b form because it's just out of order. See, the number x plus b. So all I'm going to do is just rewrite this, I guess, in the proper order. Y equals negative 1/3 x. And that was a positive 2, so I'm going to write plus 2. Okay, so I'm going to identify what's the slope. That's negative 1/3. So M. What's the y-intercept? That's 2. So that's the B. Okay, now how do you graph this by hand? Start at the y-intercept. So I'm going to start at 2, and then I'm going to do rise over run. Negative 1 over 3. So I'm going to go down 1 over 3. So I'm going to go down here to my graph. I'm going to start at 2, put a dot, and then I'm going to go down one spot over 3. 1, 2, 3. That's where I'm going to put my next dot. And I'm going to keep going in that pattern. Down 1 over 3. Down 1 over 3. And you just do this until you have a sufficient number of points to draw your line. Alright, so down 1 over 3 again. And then you can do the reverse order, up 1 over 3, left 3 I should say, and plot some other points going in the other direction. It's your choice. Look how great that dot is. But it's your choice how many points you want to graph. Again, just you need a minimum of 2 points to graph a line. But I like to graph several, so that way I get a decent looking line. Although when I'm drawing a line, they hardly ever look decent. So there's that. Okay, now let's look at these table values. I have negative 2, when x is negative 2, what's the value of y? Well, there's no dots on that, so we'll get to that. When x is negative 1, there's no dot on that, but when x is 0, y is 2, so I'm going to put a 2 there. Same thing, I'm going to skip 1 and 2. So this is the only one I was able to identify from the graph. Let's calculate these other values here by hand. So here was our equation, y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2. So I'm just going to plug in my values for x. So I'm going to rewrite the equation up here, y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2. And that's just so I don't have to keep scrolling up. And then let's just set these up so that everything x is plugged in. Okay, so here I have everything set up. I rewrote the equation, and then if you look at the red numbers, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, those are all my x values. So I'm plugging in the x value, and I'm just going to output the y value, okay? So negative 1/3 times negative 2 plus 2. That's going to get you, depending on if you're using the calculator, it might give you a decimal or it might give you the fraction. So I'll just write both. That'll be 2.6 continuous, which is why we couldn't really see that on the graph, because that's not a perfect point. Or you might see that as 8/3. This one's going to be 2.3 continuous, or 7/3. This one is going to be 2, which is what we see right here. This one is going to be 5/3, or 1.6 continued. And then this one's going to be 4/3, or 1.3 continuous. Okay, so write whatever values you want in the table. I'm just going to stick with the fractions, especially, when it's every single one of these decimal values are continuous ones that go on forever, so I prefer to write fractions in those instances. And you'll notice the pattern, they're all going down by 1/3 each step. You have the whole value 2, well that's 6/3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So the pattern should never change. And that's it for that one. Let's do these other two. Okay, so I have 2x plus 4y equals 12. What I'm going to do is I'm going to minus 2x to the other side. Then I have 4y equals, I'll put it in order this time rather than do it at the end, negative 2x plus 12. And now I can divide everything by 4. And it was just a regular 4, not a negative. Alright, so I have y equals, let's see, that'll reduce to negative 1/2x plus 3. Okay, so let's identify our slope. Our slope is negative 1/2. You never include the x with the slope. If the slope is m, not mx. Okay? And then your positive 3 is your b, your y-intercept. Okay? So if I'm going to graph this by hand, I'm going to start at 3 on the y-axis, and then I'm going to go down 1/2. So I'll start at 3, and I'll go down 1/2, down 1/2, down 1/2, and then I'll do a couple going the other way. Up 1, left 2, up 1, left 2, and that's good enough. I'll draw my line. So let's do these table values by hand, and they should match, at least the ones at negative 2, 0, and 2. They should match the values in our table. Okay, so let's go ahead and set that up. Okay, so here I rewrote the equation, and I have everything set up. So I just need to plug in the x values. Negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2 over there. Okay, so negative 1/2 times negative 2 plus 3 is 4. Negative 1/2 times negative 1 plus 3 is going to be 3.5. You should be counting down by 0.5s basically. See, negative 1/2 times 0 plus 3 is 3. And you see that right there. And we did see negative 2 comma 4 also right there. Should point that out. Negative 1/2 times 1 plus 3, well, that's going to be 2.5. And then the last one, y equals negative 1/2 times 2 plus 3, well, that's just going to be 2. And we should see that at 2 comma 2. We should see a point right there, and we do see a point at 2 comma 2. Okay, so that's it for that one. What I want you to do is do the next one on your own, and then I will post the answers on this, but I won't, and I'll just do a real quick explanation. Okay, so what I did was I subtracted 5x to the other side, and then I divided everything by 2. So that got me an equation of negative 5 over 2x plus 5. Again, you could convert that to a decimal, but when you're graphing it by hand, it makes it way easier to leave as a fraction. So the next thing I did was I got the table values. So I just plugged in negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. I just used those x values for every problem on these notes. And then just plugging that in, negative 5 over 2 times negative 2 plus 5 got me positive 10, because 2 negatives multiply to get a positive. 2 negatives multiply and get positive 2.5 plus 5 to give me 7.5. And then you notice the pattern, it's counting down by 2.5, because 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So negative 5 over 2 times 0 plus 5 is 5. The next value is 2.5. The next value is 0. And then I just wrote them down here in my table. Now for the graph, I did graph it by hand. I started at positive 5 on the y-axis, and I counted down 5, and then I went right 2. So I started at 5, and I counted down 5 spots. That goes all the way down to 0, and then I went right 2, and I put a dot. And then I went backwards. I went up 5 this time and left 2, opposite directions. And then I put check marks by these because I checked it in the table. The table is what I calculated by hand. They should all appear there. I had a negative 2 comma 10. I had a 0 comma 5, and then I had a 2 comma 0. So all three of those points show up in the table. And that's good news, okay? And that's it for these notes. Stay tuned for future videos, and take care, everyone. Bye.